If you look in your industry and there are 10 people making 10 times as much money as you are and you're not making that, then all your excuses are excuses. Go figure out what those people are doing and copy it, or find another way around it.
From Toronto, PHANTA Media presents the Not So Corporate Podcast. Hello, and welcome to the Not So Corporate Podcast. I am your host, Mark Drager, and I am joined by Leah Earle.
As always.
How you doing?
I'm
As
good.
always, you like there was like a 3 episode or 4 episode window where you weren't here.
No one remembers that dark time.
That was the dark time?
Yep.
Well, Leah, thanks for joining us here.
It's my pleasure.
Don't try and sound so excited about it.
I am super excited. That's my excited voice.
Excellent. We also have back in the studio with us Roland Echevarria. Hey, Roland.
Hi. Only when it's convenient.
Only when it's convenient. Oh, man, you were really upset we didn't have you on last week, weren't you?
Extremely. I'm still.
So
Damn. Let's talk about weddings.
No, weddings was last week. So for any astute listener or someone who's noticed, we are moving to once a week podcasts. Are you ready?
Yeah.
That was always the goal, was to do it at least once a week.
Yep.
Wouldn't it be crazy if we did it like twice a week?
No.
Let's keep
No,
the
that
intro
wouldn't
short.
be crazy, or that would be insane.
I just felt like saying no in that
in
that opportunity.
Please no. So as the producer of this podcast, how much of an impact is it on you to move from twice a month to like 4 times a month?
It's
Are you feeling
a
the
lot.
weight?
It's
Say not a problem. With
if
take
you
care
would
of it.
like to be on the podcast and you think you have a subject,
So that's what we're resorting
if
to?
you would like to do my job for me,
You
please.
should have your wife come into the podcast one day, Mark.
We are.
We are gonna
we're
do
pla-
that.
The wives of
Yeah,
PHANTA
that's-
Media.
We're
You
planning
know what?
it-
It's just setting people up is hard.
We're planning a Desperate
We have
Housewives
that.
edition. So we're gonna have, I think, my wife on. We're gonna have Oscar's wife on, and then your husband.
My husband. I don't have a wife, but
The guy with the
guy.
NBA. The guy with the NBA. Well, listen, we have a very special podcast for you today. We're not going to spend too much time in catch up because we have Warren Coughlin coming on, and he is a business coach. He's my business coach. And I wanted to have him on because some people who have heard our story kind of note 2 things. They always note the fact that when I was starting up, I started working with a business coach fairly early on, and about a midpoint in our collective journey in the company, I brought on a salespeople. So people always kind of gravitate towards, dang, I need a salesperson and I need a business coach. And today we're going to bring Warren on to talk about mentoring, to talk about business coaching, if that's the way you would describe it, as well as the big 3 mistakes that he sees business owners make. So we'll have him on the line in a few minutes. I'm hoping that it's going to be exciting. It's going to be an exciting topic, I hope.
I hope so too.
I hope, you know what, we're going to do something. We're not going to dumb it down for you guys. We're going to assume that everyone here who's listening is really smart, that they want to take their business to the next level, that they really are going to want to learn about these 3 big mistakes.
So get your notepads and pen and be ready.
Be ready, because I think you're about to get ready for a roller coaster ride, like John Rambo would say.
You're about to have an explosion of information in your head.
So I was told on Facebook to no longer speak about Rambo.
Yes, so stop.
Right.
Are you talking about Rambo?
We talked.
Why? That's what age.
Did you
No.
listen to the podcast you weren't on? There
Sure,
was
I was.
a lot of
100%.
Rambo.
Okay, well, we
like
I-
3 times.
talked about
Actually-
Rambo for like 25 minutes. We cut it
Yeah,
down.
behind the scenes information, we cut that down.
We cut that
Nice.
down to what, like 4 minutes, 3 minutes of Rambo?
It was more
Rambo.
than that.
You know what? We're going to jump straight into it. So coming up next, we got Warren Coughlin. Okay, so we are joined with Warren Coughlin, and he is a business coach. And in fact, I've known Warren for, I think, 8 years. Warren, have I known you for 8 years?
Frightening, but it seems that long, yes.
And so we met a number of years ago because he came in and spoke actually to the mastermind group I'm a part of. Anyone who's watching this on YouTube may know that I'm friends with Evan Carmichael. Evan runs a YouTube channel, and he runs a mastermind group. And Warren came into our group to actually speak to us about how to be better entrepreneurs, how to be better business people. And from there, he started this group, this entrepreneur group that I was a part of for a few years. And then I kind of lost touch with Warren for a few years. But about 2.5 years ago, I was at a point in my business where I was really I was a little bit bored, but I was really looking to take things to the next level. And so I reached back out to Warren because he is a business coach. He works with businesses that are kind of established to looking to grow. And for the last 2.5, 3 years, we've been working together weekly. And I wanted to bring him on because I know that he has a lot of insight in terms of what tends to hold entrepreneurs back, what tends to hold business people back, and what we kind of need to get over, what we need to get over from ourselves or within ourselves, what we need to hold ourselves accountable to make sure that we can hit the goals that we want to hit. So, you have these big 3 mistakes that you've seen people make time and time and time again. I wanted to talk to you about them because really I think they're things that hold many of us back, whether you're working for someone else or whether you're in fact running your own business. Can you walk us through these? So the first is lack of education. What does that mean?
Basically, most entrepreneurs go into business, and you can probably relate to this. They go into business for one of a few reasons. One is they had some personal passion that they wanted to pursue. Another is that they may have had some technical expertise. Maybe they're a lawyer, an engineer, a carpenter, something like that. Or third, they were forced into it by circumstances. They lost their corporate job and didn't know what else to do. Any one of those is a legitimate reason for going into business. But in each of those cases, it is not the case that the person started the business after a prolonged course of study in the essential elements of success for business. So they're going into this endeavor that they're dedicating their lives to without actually even knowing the foundations of what it takes to succeed. And so it's sort of like, you jump on an airplane and go by the cockpit and hear a pilot wondering what all the gauges were. You'd feel a little nervous, right? So what happens to a lot of entrepreneurs, they're actually trusting their economic fate and that of their family to somebody who doesn't know how to fly the plane. And that's just a function of them not having studied what's necessary to grow their business. Now, I'm not saying you have to do that before starting a business, but as you are growing your business, it's really important to learn the foundations about what it takes to grow a business. And every business, it doesn't matter whether you're a video production business or an airline or a law firm, every business is built on the same foundations. And if you don't know what they are, you don't kind of know what levers to pull. And so you wind up doing things by accident or by experimentation. And that's a tough way to grow a business. That's why it often takes people a lot longer, because they're just making it up and they're reinventing wheels that were invented hundreds of years ago.
Well, I often say, to your point, I'm good at what I'm good at, but there's no one who's going to teach me what I'm not good at. There's no one who's going to help point out for me where I lack, and I can't go to university or college to become an entrepreneur or a business owner. So
you can get an MBA, Mark.
You can get an MBA like your husband has, but that doesn't certainly help you.
Well, hold on a second.
Yeah, there
Is it
are
working?
schools you can go to, but if you've already started your business, you're not going to shut down your business to go back to school.
So what do you do?
Well, there's a number of things. You can talk to someone like me and actually figure out what some of the foundations are. There's tons of books that you can read about how to grow a business. There's getting mentors. There's a number of ways of doing it, right? There's a lot of trendy information. A lot of people start business and jump right into social media marketing, for instance, but they haven't learned just basics of marketing and persuasion. There's a few things you need to know in order to grow a business. First, there's only 8 numbers that you need to know and to track to drive the growth of your business. So do you want to know what they are?
Yeah, this is education for me because I don't think I track these things, do I?
Probably not. There's 8 numbers. So your business will come from 2 sources, essentially, in very broad terms. Either there's new prospects or there's returning customers. And they will behave differently. And so there's different things you need to do to engage those 2 different groups. So on the new prospect side, there's 3 numbers you have to look at. There's how many leads are you generating, but a lead is not a customer yet, right? They're just a potential customer. So then you got to know how many of those customers convert, or any of those prospects rather, convert into customers. That's called a conversion rate. So you'll have a set of strategies that generate leads. You'll have another set of strategies that convert people. And then you've got another set of strategies that determine how much they will spend with you each time. That's your average transaction size. So those 3 things together are what give you your revenue from new prospects. On the other side of the equation, you also have returning customers. And it's the same thing. You have returning lead generation. The fact that someone has dealt with you in the past does not guarantee you that they're going to buy from you again. But they're probably going to be an easier lead to generate. Once they are a lead again, then you need to, again, figure out what the conversion rate is and influence that conversion, and then apply some strategies that will influence how much they spend with you on returning transactions. So those are 6 numbers. Now, those 6 numbers together are what we call marketing. And unfortunately, the way people talk about marketing is they're only looking at the first number. People usually think marketing is just lead generation, but it's not. It's all 6 of those. And you need to have very specifically chosen tactics to influence each of those numbers. And the 6 of them together make up your revenue. Now, revenue is not the name of the game, though, right? That's sales, but we're in the game to produce profit. So then you have to think about, well, what's your gross margin? That's the percentage of the sale price that goes to cover your overhead. So that's sort of taking off your variable cost, in other words. So if you sell t-shirts for $10, costs you $4 to buy your t-shirt, that means there's $6 available to cover your overhead. So that would give you a 60% gross margin. So we've covered 7 of them. The last one is your overhead. And that's just, your rent, your salaries, all those kinds of things. Those are the only 8 numbers in the universe that drive your profitability. So while I went over that quickly, it's actually not a ton, right? There's only 8 numbers you need to know and track. And if you know them, then again, it doesn't matter whether it's a video production company, a website, a law firm, you can start driving the growth of your business by strategically and specifically targeting which of those numbers you're trying to influence.
Now, for anyone who's listening whose head just exploded hearing that, it's not, it's something that seems really daunting, seems really complicated. But, as you get into it, as you see it on paper, and I'm sure we can create something, or Warren, I think I've seen you have this on paper before, but
Yep.
but we can certainly link it up on the podcast page. As you start to work through it and realize that there's lead generation, then there's lead conversion, and as you move down channel, these are all terms that will become second nature to you very, very quickly. To most business owners, it's like trying to figure out insurance. It's like trying to figure out a loan. These are all really big, daunting tasks, but once you've been through it, or maybe you're having maybe you're being more strategic with your taxes, with your accountant, as these things come into play and become part of your everyday life year over year over year, it kind of becomes second nature. But equally, most of us are in the business of marketing. So at the very least, these are things that we should be aware of for our own clients, right?
Oh yes, absolutely. Because then you can guide them more specifically. Because a lot of people, whether you're doing a video or whether you're doing a website or anything like that, the first question is, well, what's the objective? What are you trying to do with it? Are you trying to get past customers to come back to you? Are you trying to get new customers to come? Are you just generating leads with it? Are you actually trying to get them to buy? Are you trying to get them to buy more? Like, if you don't know what your objective is, in other words, which of those numbers you're trying to influence, then your strategy is going to wind up becoming fuzzy. And if this does sound a little bit overwhelming, there is, if I can just share something on my website, if you go to warrencoghlin.com/cool-tools, I actually have a number of tools on there, and one of them will actually show you this. And there's a summary video, and then there's a calculator that you can plug in your numbers, and it'll show you exactly what's going to happen to your business if you influence each of those numbers.
Now, Warren, how much would that cost me to get those cool tools?
Free.
Wow. Sorry.
I'm there.
I try to put stuff up to help. Now, the magic of understanding these 8 numbers is if you just do little bitty improvements in each one of them. So if you do just, for instance, a 7% improvement in each of them, you can wind up creating an 80% increase in your profitability or more. Now, that's a big number. Now, if you try to increase your profitability by 80% just by focusing on lead generation, that, man, is hard. But if you focus on all 8 of these numbers, you're just making little itty-bitty improvements. And those little bitty improvements wind up leveraging each other and dramatically driving your profitability.
I have a quick question for you there, Warren. This is very, very interesting what you're talking about, and very specific, which I never thought about before. I'm not a business owner, but I feel like that's what most people do when they have startups. They think that is their service or the ideas that drive everything, and they're going to become superstars by just pushing that forward. That's kind of like, I guess, a misconception that most people have.
Yeah, I think most people fall in love with their own ideas. And because they don't understand the foundations of the business, they don't actually understand what the risks are. And so they don't put all the things in place to allow them to minimize the risk or to leverage the opportunity. It's pretty simple that if you build, just because you build it, they will not come. One of the early skills I think that most entrepreneurs and startup need to do, and I guarantee it's the one everybody shies away from the most, is sales. If you want to start a business, go study sales. Because when you start up at the beginning, that's what's going to be needed. You're going to be doing a lot of the sales yourself. And the better you are at that, the more successful and the more rapidly your business is going to grow. People have this notion that sales is somehow this slimy exercise in trying to manipulate people into buying something they don't want. And that is 100% wrong. I actually believe sales, when done properly and well, is actually one of the most noble activities. Because here's a definition of selling. Selling is professionally helping other people solve problems. And if you have a product or a service that you think solves people's problems, then you darn well better learn how to talk about it in a way that's going to entice people to talk to you about how to solve their problems.
I think selling is very daunting for people starting the business. And maybe Mark, you can speak to this, because almost when it comes to sales, you have to believe what you're offering. But if you don't feel like you're the best, or you have the best things, or you're the biggest company, I think some people feel afraid or cannot live up to the expectations. So how can you get over that and looking yourself in the mirror in the morning and say, I can sell, and I'm actually helping people with solutions, and I'm the right person to deliver?
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with one's personality. So I think if you're an A-type, competitive, go-getter of an entrepreneur, then you may have the natural confidence to believe in your own bullshit. I find that crushing. So I find the weight of trying to live up to my own expectations really daunting, and Warren has helped me with that at many times. But part of it is recognizing your own strengths and weaknesses, understanding the value you truly add to people. And it's, you know what it is? It's we grow up thinking that the stuff that we're naturally, if you're humble, you grow up thinking the stuff that you're naturally good at, everyone is good at. And then it's realizing, oh, you know what? Not everyone is good at what I'm good at. And then the next step is understanding that, hey, what I'm good at, not only is everyone not good at, but I can help them by extending what I'm good at to them. And then there's value in that, and that people appreciate that. But for me, it was unlocking the moment of being able to say to myself, because, you know, I have trouble. I think it's conceited to stand up in front of people and say, I am really good at this. You know, I think that's conceited. But it's when you get to the place where you can say, you know what, I understand my value. I add value here. I help people. I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at. Roland, that's why you're here, right? Like you're able to fill in the stuff that I'm terrible at. But when you understand what you're good at and whether people value it and how you can help them with it, that leads you into sales. Now, it doesn't help me with my 8 numbers and with lead generation, all those other things, but it helps me have the courage to be able to have conversations with senior people.
Well, it does actually help with the 8 numbers, because if you get good at sales, you will do lead generation, your conversion rate will go up. I mean, I had a client, I tripled his conversion rate in one 45-minute meeting just because he had no sales training. So we did a little scripting, a little repositioning, and all of a sudden his conversion rate jacked up. So it does actually dramatically influence those 8 numbers. The other thing I'd say about sales to your question, Roman, is one of the things is to make it not about you. When people talk about fear of failure and things like that, the reality is they're not, for the most part, they're not actually afraid of failure. What they're really afraid of is what other people are going to think about their failure. You know, we have a lot of fear of other people's opinions. And so when people are afraid of selling, what they're afraid of is that the person they're talking to is going to think badly of them. That they're afraid they're going to look like the slimy salesperson, which really means you're making the whole thing about you. But if you actually go into the sales call authentically, sincerely, looking for an opportunity to help the person in front of you, they're going to pick that up. You know, I have in a number of sales calls, I've actually said to people, you know what? I can help you, but I think there's a better approach over here that's going to be better for you. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to help you. And I'm going to get you the best help I can. And when you approach a sales call that way, you never come across like the manipulative, slimy salesperson. You come across as someone that other people can trust and that they want to deal with. So even if they don't deal with you on that deal, they're going to tell someone else about you because you are an authentic, honorable, humble, ethical human being. And that will drive your sales dramatically. The 2 process skills that I think drive personal growth and will drive the growth of the business that I see over and over and over again. The first is time management. Learning how to control your time creates discipline around you, and you wind up showing up differently. And the other is financial management. Learning to read your financial statements, knowing what your numbers are telling you, learning the story that they're saying, and which numbers are key to the success of your business. Often what happens is, even if the review of the financials doesn't actually reveal anything new or surprising, the simple fact that you are now acting as a business owner rather than an employee by taking control of the numbers in your business makes you a better business person, and you show up differently when you're selling, you show up differently when you're recruiting, you show up differently when you're delivering, and you wind up becoming a stronger business person, which makes you more attractive to quality people and to quality clients. So, so now I'm up to 3. In terms of a startup, the 3 biggie skills to learn: sales, time management, and financial management. So if you want to know where to start, those are the 3 sets of skills that you really have to master coming out of the gate.
That's a lot to throw at anyone. So I guess it's like, how do you attack it? Which would be the second big mistake that people tend to make, which is lack of planning.
Yep.
Does that flow very well into the fact that, oh my goodness, how am I going to do all that and service customers and be good at my job and be good at the technical and do everything?
Yep.
You just gave us way too much. So how is planning then going to help me overcome that?
So planning is critical. Every sports coach and every military commander will tell you that what happens on the field of battle never perfectly reflects what happened on the plan, but they will also tell you that without the plan, they would have got their butts kicked. And so it's really important that you do plans, because all plan is a framework for decision making. What people do wrong is, in that long list of everything I said people need to do, is they try, in fact, to tackle it all at once. And then everything gets to the 20-yard line and nothing gets completed. And so the business continues to stand on really kind of rickety supports rather than a solid foundation. Alternatively, if you say, okay, in a year, I have 4 quarters. Every quarter, I'm going to work on 1 or 2 key disciplines. That'll mean over the course of the year, I will have improved on 8 of them. You find me 10 businesses that have made 8 improvements in the fundamentals over a course of a year. Not very many. And it's because they're all trying to do everything at once. So when I say planning, I don't mean doing the 5-year plan with financial projections that you give to the bank to get a loan. If you need to do that to get a loan, go ahead and do it. Otherwise, it is a colossal waste of time. And for some people, this may sound controversial because everybody tells them to do a 5-year business plan. I think a 5-year business plan for an entrepreneur is just a waste of resources and time. What you want to do is say, here's where I am right now. Where do I want to be in 1 year? Identify the key things you want to improve, and then break it down by quarter. And you want to do 90-day plans. In this 90 days, this is what I'm going to fix. I understand there's 12 other things I need to fix, but they're not going to get done in this 90 days. I'm focusing on these 2.
Quick question for you, Warren.
Quick question, Roland?
Always. That's my thing.
Quick question.
Leah, you can edit this out. Would you say the planning is not what people think is sitting down with a piece of paper and say, here's where my milestones, the things I'm going to do step by step, but it's tying back to vision and knowing where you're going and realizing that there are steps you need to take to get there. You might not know what those steps are just yet, but you know where you're going?
Yeah, I mean, you always start with the vision, or start with your reason why you're doing things, and then build your plan around that. Don't make it just tactical. There's 2 kinds of people in the world. I say there's outcome-focused people and there's task-focused people. Task-focused people, everything is an obstacle and a burden that they have to endure. And what happens when you're task-focused is the tasks build up and you wind up becoming demotivated. You wind up being resentful about working too hard, and then you want to quit. People who are outcome-focused, their view is always on the horizon. And these things that are coming up are just, they're speed bumps I got to get over on my way to that place over there. And that's a better way psychologically to approach it. And if you do that, so there's like, okay, I want to get there, and here's why. I have a really compelling reason why I want to get there, whether it's to provide for my family or make an impact on the world or achieve freedom, whatever your reason is. You got to be really clear on that and keep reminding yourself of it, so you're always focused on achieving that destination. And then you're going to plan out the key steps you need to take on your way to get there. A plan is not a to-do list, right? A to-do list is kind of oppressive. A plan says when it's going to be done, who is going to do it, and by when is it going to be finished. The first time you do a plan, you're going to suck at it. It's going to be hard. You don't know how long things are going to take. You're going to make guesses, and a bunch of your guesses are going to be wrong. But guess what happens as a result of that? You learn. Now all of a sudden you learn, oh, that thing took me 25% longer than I thought it would. Well, what's that going to mean for your next plan? You're going to plan less. I always try to get people, when I'm helping them do their first plans, is to plan minimally, not maximally, so that they can set themselves up for success and they get some sense of how long things take.
But how do you have time to do all this stuff? So so number one, lack of education. I need to be better at the 8 key numbers. I need to understand the 7 drivers. I need to get all these personality things done. Now I need to do planning. When do you have time to do all of this stuff?
Well, you're going to be working anyway, so you're better off planning what it is you're going to do.
You're going to be working on what?
Well, that depends on where you are in your business. If you're right at startup, you need to look at your financials to get your financials set up. You've got to look at your core product or service offering, make sure it actually meets the needs of your target market. And you need to think of what your unique selling proposition is and your core messaging so you can communicate to your prospects effectively.
But you can spend so much time doing this stuff, you don't actually ever do the work. I think someone has once accused me of that.
Yeah, but you're asking me about startups.
Well,
right?
Startups, yeah, or people who want to take things to the next level potentially. You may be operating just kind of clumsy, and you may be, I was very clumsy for the first 8 months of my business before I realized that I didn't know what the hell I was doing.
Right. So this is the hard kind of coaching lesson about discipline. If you don't have clarity on what it is you're selling, well, yeah, you can try to stumble forward and work on building a team and all the rest of that, but it's going to take you a lot longer than if you spend 10 days and sit down and figure out what it is exactly you're selling, what pain it solves, whose pain you're trying to solve, and what's the kind of emotional messaging that's going to meet the needs of that market.
So do you think more often than not entrepreneurs have a lack of planning, or do you think they mostly have they're frozen in a state of constant planning because they're looking for perfection before they take it to market?
No, there's a lack of planning. Thinking about things all the time is not the same as planning. What a lot of entrepreneurs do is they do a bit of the paralysis by analysis, that they sit there thinking, and not doing. So what I'm suggesting in planning is you have to sit down and say what it is you're going to do. There may be 100 questions that you need to solve, but at some point, the true art of growth is the art of decision making. You may decide wrong, but at least you've made a decision. There's a consequence you can evaluate and now make a new decision. So what I'm suggesting is you've got to put some stakes in the ground and say, okay, what's the core problem that I need to solve? But if you just look at your business and go, oh my goodness, there's 30 things that are broken and I don't know where to start, then you'll just continue to stare at the wall.
I don't know if being an entrepreneur has been romanticized in a way where people say, nothing to start from nothing. I don't know what I was doing, but I built something. Is that just too romanticized, the idea of just jump in there and start swimming and see where it goes? Or these people really plan or we're just lucky along the way and it didn't fail?
One of my mentors has this great metaphor about, exceptions to the rule. The 1 or 2 people that you hear about, that have made huge money and they did it on the back of a napkin and they made it up as they went along. Yep, it is absolutely true there are people who have done that. But if you look on the road beside them, it is strewn with collapsed companies that tried to do the same thing and failed. So you don't build your business on the exception to the rule. You build your business on the rule. There are absolutely freaks of nature. Sometimes, someone had a product that just hit. I mean, when I was a kid, there was this thing called the pet rock, which somebody did as a joke, and it took off as this sort of viral, silly thing, and the guy made millions of bucks off it. But you would never predict that, right? And there was no core reason why that should have succeeded. But that was just a fluke that happened to connect with the zeitgeist at the right time.
The Snuggly. Do you know how much money the guys who invented the Snuggly have made?
Oh, yeah. And if
Wait,
you sat down
are you saying
school,
like...
The Snuggly, the blanket with the arms.
Are you saying that isn't a genius idea?
I'm saying that they've made hundreds of millions of dollars off of essentially a piece of flannel with arms in it.
I know like 1 million people that have those.
Do you?
Everyone I know has one of those. Yeah.
It's the most ridiculous thing ever.
I've never met anybody who has one.
Neither have I.
They're just hiding them from you. People are very relaxed around me. They're like, would you like to see my wearable blanket?
While you guys are drinking, I'm guessing, right?
No.
But my point to Roland is that, yes, there are people who've made it without doing some of the things I've talked about, without learning the things that I've suggested people learn, but they are the exceptions. And in point of fact, some of the people, I've actually done this. I had a couple of clients who were that sort of seemingly organic, successful business person. But when I actually dove into their business, they were doing all the stuff I'm talking about. They just didn't know they were doing it, right? They were intuitively really, like, they looked at their financials. They looked at their numbers. They were very effective recruiters. They put in processes in place. But they did it sort of organically, and if you asked them whether they had a system to it, they would have gone, gee, shucks, no. But when you actually look at their business, they were doing it.
And so the third of your big mistakes is avoidance of accountability.
Yep.
Now, I would think that, when you're an entrepreneur, when you're a small business owner, when you're doing your own thing, you have ultimate accountability because it's all on your shoulders. So how can entrepreneurs be running away from accountability when they've chosen a path where everything lands on their shoulders?
Most entrepreneurs are really smart. And here's the thing that nobody has told smart people. Smart people don't tell themselves stupid lies. And so the excuses that you come up with for not doing the things that you know you should be doing will sound really reasonable. And you won't call them excuses, you'll call them reasons. The reason I haven't changed my business is just because I've got so much to do. The reason I'm not hiring is because there are no good people out there. They've identified themselves as a struggling entrepreneur. And so that's how they keep themselves. And no one is calling them on that.
So in your mind, how much of the kind of bullshit that we tell ourselves as entrepreneurs is my geography is not a good enough geography. I don't have the business experience. I don't have the connections. I don't have the money. I started my company 5 years too late. I'm too young. I'm too old. How much of that is real, and how much of that is bullshit that we make up in our minds that's holding us back?
There's kind of an approach that military people take, which I really respect. I mean, military command structure I don't think is appropriate in business, but there's a military way of thinking that I think more entrepreneurs need to take, which is simply, there are facts on the ground. How do I adjust my behavior to take into account those facts on the ground? The economy has changed. Okay, what do I need to shift in order to compensate for that, right? And you have to be very sort of objective in the decision making around that and try to avoid the excuse making. And to your question, specifically, how much of it is bullshit? A lot of it is. If you look in your industry and there are 10 people making 10 times as much money as you are and you're not making that, then all your excuses are excuses. Go figure out what those people are doing and copy it, or find another way around it. Until you have tried, here's a very simple example. My guess would be, if we were to ask most of your listeners how many marketing tactics they are using at any given time to generate leads, 80% of them will be 4 or less. There are easily 120 different tactics that people can be doing with multiple versions of each one. So if you say my business can't succeed because my 4 marketing tactics aren't working, I call bull. You're not trying everything you could be trying in order to succeed. As an entrepreneur, I agree. You have a higher level of personal responsibility because you're not just sitting waiting for a boss to give you work, and you've taken this on. And this is why I love working with entrepreneurs. They are, by nature, more responsible individuals. But that doesn't mean they've hit the highest levels of personal responsibility, right? And when you hold yourself to that highest level of personal responsibility, you're going to wind up generating more results. And the reality is, most people, why do the best athletes in the world have coaches? It's because they need someone to push them that little bit extra.
What of the person who goes, I'm on the hamster wheel. I've done what I can do. I've tried what I can try. It just doesn't work. And it's easy to say, well, that's an emotional trap and you got to get over it and you got to do, but that doesn't help, when I feel that way, when other entrepreneurs feel that way, it doesn't help to mentally know it when emotionally you're not there.
No, and that's fair. And then you've got to do some diagnostics. Like, why is it that this stuff isn't working? I'm not one of these Pollyannish folks. If you're selling buggy whips and cars have come in, your business is in trouble, right? And there's no sort of positive thinking looking at the secret that's all of a sudden going to increase the demand for buggy whips.
Did you just drop on us a 100-year-old reference?
I did.
Roland doesn't know what a buggy whip is. I imagine that's something that you hook up to a horse.
That's before me too, okay?
Okay, we're not trying to make you feel old. We just have no idea what it is.
It's a classic reference. Okay, let's make it more modern. If you were selling fax machines.
Oh, no, now you're showing your age again.
I know. Or CDs, right? Things change. And so if you insist on continuing to sell something that the market doesn't want, yeah, you've got a problem. You're going to have to shift your business. You have to look at it and say, is the product that I'm providing actually needed by the market? Do I have the necessary skills to do what I'm promising to my clients? If you don't, then yeah, go get better. This is one of the things that not enough people want to do. And that's why the first mistake is lack of education. People don't actually have the skills to run a business. So go get better. And if you don't want to get better, then you have to accept the consequences. Either you're going to make little bits of money, or you have to go into an entirely different business or go work for somebody. Another one of my mentors, he says, can you get rich quick? He says, yes, if quick is 10 years. Because it's going to take you that long to learn everything to run a business and then put it into place.
What was that, Roland?
Or you're Colombian from the
80s. You're Colombian from the 80s? Then you can get rich a lot quicker?
Really fast.
And I was going to say the medical industry is keeping the fax machine alive forever. You have to fax everything.
And there's a few people selling
lawyers.
Well, there's the old joke,
fax
right?
machine.
Like, who was the stupid person who bought the first fax machine? Right? Who was he faxing?
Say that for the first
Come on, think about that joke. That's a good joke. That's a good joke from 1996.
Dude, he was faxing himself. He was so cool.
Yeah.
He was used as a copier, probably.
Which is what everyone else says.
Accountability doesn't necessarily mean you have to hire somebody like me. You can. I have a friend. We get together once a month and we hold each other accountable to the promises we've made. Right? It can be a pal. There are mastermind groups. Mark, you're in one with Evan, which is great. There are, private mentors, people who will just help you because they like you. So however you do it, you just need to have some way of making sure you're accountable to keep your promises and to have somebody who's going to call you on your own nonsense.
Well, you know what? That's a great way to wrap up this portion of our conversation in terms of the three big mistakes. So lack of education, lack of planning, and avoidance of accountability. Now, we did have a listener write in, Anthony Jackson, who wrote in with a few more questions, and we wanted to throw them over at you, Warren, because we thought, you know what, you could probably do a better job at answering a few of these than we could. So the first question from Anthony Jackson is, how do I find a mentor to help guide me in the beginning crucial stages of startup? So how does one go about finding a mentor, kind of regardless of geography or where they're at?
There's finding a mentor, and then there's finding a good mentor, which are slightly, sometimes the questions we ask are important. So finding a good mentor can be a bit tricky, because here's what the temptation is, and there's a lot of people in my industry who even trot some of this stuff out, is what you need to do is go find somebody who's really successful in business and have them take you under their wing. Now, being good in business does not necessarily make you good at coaching or mentoring. Wayne Gretzky was a spectacular hockey player. His coaching career was not as successful, right? And sometimes that happens because he was such an intuitive player, like things would come to him naturally, that my guess is he doesn't fully understand why other people don't get the obvious play. You need to have somebody who actually understands the foundations of a business and who is going to help you realize on your vision, not their vision for you. So the person needs to have humility, some expertise, and a willingness to help. Now, you also have to think when you're approaching someone like that is what's in it for them. I've had people come up to me and just say, well, will you help me do this? And I don't know them. They're not giving me any indication what they're about. They're sort of approaching me as if I have some moral obligation to take time away from my family and my paying clients to help some stranger. Right? So you got to figure out a way of giving some benefit to a mentor. One of the ways of doing that is to make sure you promise that you're going to heed their advice. So I'm going a step ahead, but the surest way to lose a mentor is to go to them for advice or counsel and then completely ignore what they've told you. because now you're just completely wasting their time. So where do you go? In the early stages, if you're just starting up, you're probably going to go to people in your immediate network. There's going to be a family friend, maybe a parent's friend ran a business, and they like you. And what you need to do is kind of butter them up a little bit and say, you know, I've always respected you and the level of success you've achieved. I'd really love to emulate the kinds of things you've done. So I'm wondering if I can, you know, from time to time approach you and ask you some questions. And I promise I will listen and try to do as much as I can that you advise. It's a great way to start.
Yeah, you know, like I'm a big fan of just admitting to people openly, like, wow, I am really impressed with what you've done. You're got 20 years on me in my career. Can I take you out for lunch sometime and pick your brain? And if they're cool for going out for lunch, and then at lunch they're cool, and then you ask a follow-up question by email, you can kind of gauge whether they're more open to actually building a relationship with you versus simply kind of just fielding the questions, if you know what I mean. Like, they may just be polite enough to go out for lunch but not be engaged or interested. They may answer your questions but not really want to answer them, or they may be curt. But if through, like, you know, building a relationship and having lunch and asking a few questions and sending them a gift as a thank you card and just showing that you really respect what they have to say, then it gives you more of an indication of, it may be an informal mentorship, or you may need 3 or 4 different people just to fill in the questions that you may have. You may not find one person who can certainly give you enough time to answer all of your questions all the time.
Yeah. And the other thing is, now this may be controversial, and I'm assuming not everyone will agree with me on this, but I think you need to enter it with a bit of humility. Some people, when they start, they've got this grand vision for their business. But when you come to me with, you know, $1,000 in the bank, and saying that your vision is to have a global enterprise that is going to transform some social problem so there will be a complete eradication of poverty in the next 5 years as a result of your business. As a mentor, I'm probably going to roll my eyes a little bit and say, this is somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about and not want to invest my time. So you have to, you need to have a vision, but you need to make it so that it's a bit plausible and realistic. Now, I almost choke when I say that, because I don't, you know, what is realistic can sometimes be a definition for being pessimistic, and I don't mean it that way. But if you're looking too pie in the sky, so that your credibility is damaged, then the mentor is probably not going to be that interested.
Well, and the other thing to do is don't just tell the person that you want to do what they do. like you know, it's I find it a little bit.
I want to be just like you.
Thanks, Roland. It irks me. It irks me when people say, you know, you've been so successful, I'm doing what you're doing. You know, like the words "I'm doing what you're doing," or "I'm growing a business just like you're growing a business," or "We're doing the exact same thing as you." I don't know why, but it's like, well, I know enough to know that I'm actually doing what works for me in my geography, and you can't really be doing the exact same thing as me because you're not me. And, you know, like there's all these things that trigger in my brain where I go, this person's full of shit. But if
it's actually subtly insulting.
Yes, because if they instead said, I'm watching what you're doing and it's amazing, and I'm not sure if I could do it in my geography or not, but I would love to run a few questions by you. And like, it's just this subtle shift away from like, hey, you know, it's like when someone's trying to get a job with us and they say, we're going to come in and help you take your firm to the next level. You may, but don't tell me that. I mean, like.
Okay, but can you have a mentor that's not in your industry? Would that solve
Absolutely.
problem?
Sometimes that can be a very good thing, because the ideas from another industry can be really great fuel for new creative ideas. Sometimes people within industries get their own narrative about what's possible and not possible, and it can actually put blinders on you. It should be somebody who's actually just smart about business, who understands things like customer experience, understands things about building a strong team. Those are the universals that apply in any business. Now, there may be certain questions you have that are industry specific, like, you know, what's a reasonable margin on this kind of thing? Or, you know, where would I find production facilities that can help me manufacture this? Those kinds of things. You may want somebody who's from that industry. But general business principles, I think it's really wise actually to consult with people outside your industry. Now, that's one kind of mentor. As I said, the other is mastermind groups. Now, if you're starting, now here's a cautionary note. If you join a mastermind group with a whole bunch of other startups who don't have any experience, you're going to be a feedback loop for each other's nonsense, because none of you actually have the experience. So in an ideal world, you'll get involved in a group where there's a mix of people, some experienced, some less experienced, so that you're actually getting the wisdom of people who've been there and done that a little bit. But those kind of groups can be great for the accountability because, it's interesting. As a one-on-one coach, people can come to me and make up a bunch of stuff about why they didn't get things done, and I might give them a hard time, but, they're okay with it. But when you're part of a group and you're the only one in the whole group that didn't do what you said you were going to do, that's embarrassing, right? And that improves the level of accountability. And then the third approach is to actually pay for a professional mentor. Like there are people like me who have been trained in how to do this, and we actually have frameworks and models and methodologies. And, I've been doing this for 13 years. I've coached hundreds of businesses. So one of the great keys to success, and I want to write an article about this at some point, but it's pattern recognition. It's really underappreciated. When you've never done a business before, you don't have that pattern recognition. Somebody who's been around hundreds of businesses, there's times I can talk to somebody and within 15 minutes know that they're going to be in serious trouble in 6 months.
Do you meet people and they don't have the qualities to be an entrepreneur? It's really, to me personally, I feel like it'd be a really intimidating thing, especially the business side of things. Do you meet people that you're like, you're not going to be able to do this?
The only time people are unable to do it is if they're unwilling to take new action, right? If they are what I call professional victims, where all circumstances in their life are someone else's fault or responsibility, those people are almost impossible to coach. Those people I can't help because they're just going to continually look for someone to blame for their circumstances. Anyone who is willing to take full responsibility and to really listen and to try and to take action and evaluate action, any of those people can succeed.
Now, this isn't a question that was on our sheet, and it wasn't something that Anthony had asked, Anthony Jackson, one of our listeners.
Hello, Anthony.
But I'm wondering about complacency and comfort. When I come to you because I feel like everything is on the line, when I'm so fired up where I go, everything is at risk and I need to save my business and I need to take it to the next level. Well, that motivates me to act. But, then there are times where you're like, revenue's good and staff is good and customers love us and things are great. And then you get kind of comfortable and complacent. How much of that affects what we're doing as business owners?
Tons. And it's a great question, and it taps into something from an evolutionary standpoint. That mindset is really it's in some ways more dangerous than the victim mindset in some ways. Unless they're a professional victim, a lot of people when they get into a victim mindset may get frustrated enough that they want to change it. But see, from an evolutionary perspective, our brain's job is not to make us happy, it's to keep us safe, right? If I miss the fragrance of a lilac on a Sunday morning, nothing bad is going to happen to me. If I miss the saber-toothed tiger coming over the hill, I'm pretty much hooped. We developed an orientation to the negative, right? And sort of a fear orientation. So when you get in a place that's safe and comfortable, there's a huge part of your brain that goes, this is where we're supposed to be. Don't change. Don't move out of this, because if we move out of this, we're entering a place of danger. And so that comfort zone is very, very seductive because it taps into an evolutionary imperative. But it's not an imperative that makes you happy. It's an imperative that makes you safe. And so one of the things you have to do is when you're in that state is, am I actually feeling fulfilled? If you are, great. You don't have to become, Bill Gates. You can be comfortable making, a modest income and providing for your family. And if that gives you fulfillment in all areas of your life, outstanding. You're not going to hear me push you further. But if you're bored, if you're having ennui, if life feels kind of, bland, then you've fallen into a comfort zone place. And you've got to be aware that that's where you've fallen. And there is an opportunity to re-engage and to experience fulfillment. And this is the subtext behind why I do everything I do, is I believe entrepreneurship is a vehicle through which people can lead fulfilling lives.
I believe entrepreneurship is a way to torment yourself 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Well, that's only if you don't learn the ways of getting there. I've got a number of clients who I've taken to the point where they've got second tier of management. They're not there every day, and they are digging life because they're making really good money. They've got tons of freedom. and they're making a difference in the world by providing great places to work, by providing valuable services, and then they engage in many instances, philanthropic activities that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to do.
So second question from Anthony Jackson. Roland, maybe I'll throw this over to you. Can I start my production company without a crew? So, Anthony says that he can film and edit and distribute on his own. He has great communication skills, but he's wondering if he can start the company without a full crew, or if he should just stick to freelancing and try to build up slowly. What are your thoughts on that? More of a technical question.
I think, I don't really have experience with this, but I would say.
What do you mean you don't have experience with this?
Well, I didn't start a business being by myself. You have more experience when it comes to this than me. But I would say, if you're yourself, you can start a company certainly, but at one point or another, you need to grow and take it to the next level where it's just more than just you. You cannot do everything. You cannot be everywhere every single time. You can call yourself a company, but really you're freelance and you're a jack of all trades. So if your mindset is to grow into a company, yes, you can start like this because there's very low cost to run a company. You don't need an office. You need to pay someone salary per se, but eventually you need to start figuring out your planning and all the other stuff to put something that's more of a machine of a company where other people can come in and help you grow and be that.
Yeah, so I started the firm 9 years ago here at PHANTA, and Roland, you've been with us 5 years. So that's a whole 4-year window where I did the productions and I did the editing and I sold and I took care of client management and I took care of everything before we brought you on full time. Mm-hmm. Now, did I have a production company? I really think it's a question of your mindset, right? So I had a production company because I wasn't interested in just being me, as well as the fact that I did bring on freelance crew to fill the gaps for what I sucked at. So, you started with us as a freelance worker and then became a full-time employee. But that's only because I'm a terrible DOP. I'm not very visual. I suck at lighting. I have no patience for it. So we were a production company because I brought in to fill the gaps of what I couldn't do, whether it's motion graphics or DOPing or, multiple crew members or, makeup or script writing or whatever my shortfalls were, I brought in people to do it. In my mind, that made me a production company. If I'm unwilling to do that and I want to do everything myself, then call yourself a production company or not. At the end of the day, you're just a one-person deal.
But I think the difference is when you create a company, is you have vision, you want to go somewhere. While you're just a freelancer, it's easy to get in a safe environment, like Warren was talking earlier. You're safe doing it. It makes good money. You can go shoot and come home and have a couple of beers where you edit it, and that's a comfortable place to be. And some people enjoy that, but that only allows you to grow so much. So if you want to go further than that, you want to see a company, you want to see a staff, you want to one day come and open the door and see people working and just you. I think you need to put the mindset forward and have that.
Yeah, so in my first year of business, we did $100,000. That's what the company did in revenue, and I took home $16,000 of that personally. So you could look at it and go, well, where did $84,000 go, right? Like, that's proportionately not great. If I was a freelancer, then I'd have a $100,000 salary. But I had offices and I had bookkeeping and I had like all this crap that cost a lot of money when we had no revenue, which meant I wasn't taking much money home. Now, Warren, I think you mentioned yesterday, we were having a conversation, I think you mentioned, an insight in terms of like there's a weird bandwidth where people can make a lot of money and then suddenly they stop making money. I was speaking to you about that, wasn't I?
Yep. Yeah, so it can happen in a lot of businesses that as you grow, people think that one more unit of effort is going to equal one more unit of output. But there's actually something, technically it's called a sigmoid curve. So it's sort of like if you start a graph, it drops down and then goes up into kind of a stylized S. And what happens at some point is you start adding people into your business and adding overhead. And so you've built this foundation, but the revenue is not high enough to be producing profits. And so there's a period in there in which you're actually making less money than you did as an individual. It isn't always the case, but it's common enough that it's a pretty recognized dynamic when businesses grow. What's important to do is know that you're in that place and get through that stage as fast as possible. But if you give up at that point, what some people do is say, oh, gee, this is just too hard, so I'm going to go back to being a solo. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like if that's what makes someone happy and they're loving the rest of their life, that's great. There's a risk associated with it. If you get sick or anything like that, all your revenue dries up. But if you're willing to take that risk and you enjoy what you're doing, that's fine. But if you want to grow, you got to recognize that there's going to be sort of tension points in there in which you're going to be going, to hire that next person is going to reduce my profits for a while until I can sell into that increased capacity. And so am I prepared to do that and stay with it for the long haul to get to that next level?
Yeah, and so when I say that I did 100,000 in my first year, I think our second year was 185. And we did 100,000 and we did 185 with the exact same capacity, exact same overhead, exact same everything. So when you look at it that way, you go, well, 185 is certainly a lot better. And then when we hit, 350 and then, 400 and when we kept going, there was this really great growth period where we kept extremely lean, but for every $100,000 you add, you're actually padding profits a lot more than you're adding overhead. Now, you start to hit the bump when you go from one person to two people is an impact. And then when you go from two people to 4 or 5 people, it's an impact. Like you can add kind of just one person and slide them in from 2 to 3 if your revenue's there. But as you start to go from 5 people to 8 people and 8 people to 11 people to 12 people and so on, the impact becomes greater and greater, and you need to catch up to it. But again, Anthony, to answer your question, it's just the mindset. So what do you want? Do you want to be a freelancer? Do you even want will your ego or do you want to be associated as a freelancer, or do you want what a lot of us want, which is to say that you own a company and build something lasting. And when you're a freelancer, it's your name, it's your brand, and that's fine. But equally, you can build a company under your name and your brand, and you can create something bigger than simply yourself. So I think, yes, you can do either. It's what you want to do.
We
right?
actually had this conversation years ago. We
You
were
and I?
driving out to the IO shoot. I was freelancing with you.
To IO?
Yeah.
Oh,
we were
Infrastructure
in the
Ontario.
winter, like the second shoot we did. You had this. You were like, I don't know what to do. Should I just continue with the business? If I become a freelancer, I can make so much more money. I can run out of my basement. I remember we had this conversation.
I've had this conversation for years because it's like we've been stuck. You're always gonna feel like man, I could make so much money. If I got a lot smaller, I can make money, or if I get a lot bigger, I can make money. But it's a bit of a myth because you can't go backwards. I mean, you can deconstruct everything and blow everything up if you want, but then you lose everything, all of the freedom that you get from having a really good team and the capabilities and everything else. So you can't really go backwards. And what I've also learned is you can't really just grow your way profitable. I mean, you can't throw money and try and double or triple your revenue really, really quickly to just suddenly fix a scalability issue. And that's, scalability we didn't even get into, Warren, but that's a whole different topic. But you can't go backwards and get smaller very easily because you lose what makes you, and you can't grow yourself profitable. I know I've tried. It doesn't work unless if you somehow have, this product that is going to blow up.
Right. Agreed.
How do you break up a mentorship relationship when it no longer works?
Break up a mentorship relationship?
That's a really good question, yeah.
How do you break up a mentorship relationship?
If you're the mentee.
For example, you start with someone and you grow into a level, and at one point...
I can give you the easy answer to
you
that.
invite them for coffee and you do like...
It's not you.
It's not you.
It's not you, it's me.
It's me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, end with gratitude.
That's good.
That's good.
That's a good one.
You
That's
get
much
them
better.
a gift, like a really nice one, like a gold watch, and you're like, thank you so
Gold
much.
watch.
No.
And
Something
then they
personal.
know it's over.
Something personal. Well,
But
like...
also try not to just spring it on them. Don't just walk in one. Because if you've got a mentor who's been with you, they're somewhat invested in your success. Like most of my clients, I care pretty deeply about them succeeding. And if they just come in one day and said, yeah, you know what, I'm done today. Like I actually think that's highly disrespectful.
I hope you don't mind me sharing this. For me, something you and I spoke about very, very early on was just my mindset in terms of our relationship. And I made it clear that, as long as this is an investment, then it makes sense. But as soon as it becomes an expense, then it doesn't. And so, it's like a challenge for both of us to say, okay, so you and I have a fee structure, and we work together for a few years, but each month I go like, this is an investment. This is an investment in me. This is an investment in my business. This is an investment in my future. This is an investment. But if it stops returning value, then it's just become an expense. It's just become overhead. And then I would, I respect you. I would give you the opportunity to say, hey, this is becoming an expense. How can we continue to make this an investment? How can you push me? How can you challenge me? How can we take this to the next level? And if you can't, because sometimes you outgrow your mentor, sometimes you outgrow your mentorship group, sometimes you outgrow your coach. I had a coach in my first 2 years of business who was not you. They were certainly valuable at the time to help me in startup, but they couldn't take me past that. They got too busy with what they were doing and a whole bunch of other reasons. But you're a coach for the people who are established who want to take things to the next level. So as long as you're doing an investment, as long as you can see it that way, then you can start to see the returns and the payoff. If it's just an expense, then I think you're just wasting your time or money.
Oh, I agree. But just so long as you actually discuss it, and particularly if it's an unpaid mentor, you really want to make sure you treat them respectfully. Because one of the great things about, I think, being a successful entrepreneur, however you want to define that, is you need to have gratitude. And just tying back to my planning discussion earlier, one of the things that people do wrong when they're doing goal setting and planning and all that kind of stuff is they make where they are wrong, right? They say, it sucks where I am and I want to get there. Instead of saying, you know what, I'm in a really great place. I've got a business. Not very many people have a business. I've got clients who I can serve. I've got some skills that I can serve them with. I'm really fortunate to be here. How can I create more of that? It's a very different mindset. And so even in your interactions with your mentor, if you're terminating it, terminate it with gratitude. Even if you didn't get tons of value, this is someone who gave of their time and their effort, of the whatever abilities they had within them for your benefit. And whether you made a bunch of money off it or not, the fact that they were willing to take that time with you deserves your gratitude.
A few pieces of advice when you're entering a relationship with a mentor, a coach, or what have you. Be wary if you have to give up equity, because you're not bringing on a mentor, you're bringing on a partner. So that's something that you just want to be careful about and evaluate the same way you would any partnership.
I actually think it's smart. I actually have never asked for equity. There's people who do. And but I want people to think about this because it's important. The reason I don't is I don't want to be in a conflict of interest. For a number of clients that I've had, they've hit an economic return that's good, and their challenge is finding more time with family. If I'm paid on equity, my interest is seeing your business grow. If your interest is in finding time with family, you may in fact be comfortable taking a drop in income in order to achieve that lifestyle goal. At that moment, we're now in a conflict of interest. Whereas if we're in a fee structure, my only interest is in ensuring that your personal goals are realized.
Yeah, I totally agree. You want the person who's going to push you and hold you accountable and get you to the level of where you want to go. You're not looking for shareholders. You're not looking for potentially a partner. But if there is equity, just really question it. If it's on a fee structure, question what you can afford. Question how much. If someone is asking for $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $100,000, per year, and you're in a startup mode, or maybe even if you're a pretty successful company, you have to question how much of your revenue you're giving over. How much, can you even afford it? And they can promise the world, but what I've learned about coaching is with all respect to Warren, coaches open up your eyes to what you need to be aware of, but you still have to do the work. Coaches do not do the work for you. They if anything, they show you what more work you need to do. It's even more work. And so you got to question, if you're taking money that you could be applying towards staff or towards other things to help free you up to do the work, you can't bring those other people in. You're robbing the business of its operating cash in order to pay someone who's going to point out a lot of stuff for you and maybe open up your eyes, but you won't have any time to take action because you're so busy trying to pay their salary. So just be very careful, proportionally. I've seen people who do business coaching and they're comfortable, with a $5,000 or $6,000 a year fee, and that's what their fee is, and you get what you pay for. And then I've seen, I was looking on Reddit, I saw someone who wanted $120,000 a year, and to me that's crazy. You're basically, if they have a few of those clients, they're basically just working a few hours per month or per week, and you're just paying their salary. Like you're never going to get that value back. So just be careful.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit there. You've got to think about the value you're getting. I mean, one of my mentors, he was paid $1 million to coach a business.
But Warren, not a video production or creative startup or
no,
growing,
that's
right?
true. But
so so if you're going to be the
yeah.
coach of the CEO for IBM or Hewlett Packard or something like that, or even a private company, then that makes sense. But if you're on year 2 or 3 of your business and you're doing $500,000 in revenue, or $250,000 or $1 million or $2 million. You just need to be aware that there's a whole spectrum of people, and I wouldn't suggest you go cheap, but I would just caution that you don't fall into the trap of believing that someone's going to totally revolutionize your business. They're not. They're going to help you revolutionize your business, but you still need to do the work.
Yep.
All righty. Listen, Warren, thank you so much for joining us on this call. I really do appreciate it. Now,
My pleasure.
If you want to check out Warren's tools that he spoke about, you can check them out. We're going to have a link in the description as well as on the blog page, or you can find him at Warren Coughlin, right?
Warren Coughlin.
Coughlin, not Coughlin.
Coughlin.
So you can find him at warrencoughlin.com, as well as the tools are warrencoughlin.com/cool-tools. And Coughlin is spelt, Warren?
Coughlin.
There you go. Listen, thanks so much for joining us, and I really do appreciate it. And
My pleasure.
I will talk to you in a few days for our next coaching session, right?
It will do.
Awesome. Thanks, Warren. With this week's question of the week, Leah.
All right, this week.
This
All right, this week's
the mouse
question
squeaks
of the week.
for our
Are you
audience.
insinuating my voice is squeaky again?
This
We've heard that
squeaks-
joke.
This squeaks mousy
This
question of the
question
week.
of the week is, because Halloween is 4 weeks away,
Mm-hmm.
we would like to know what you're going to be for Halloween. And 2-part question. Second part is, will you wear your costume into work? Because I think it's really lame not to. Just
No.
saying.
Good question.
Third question for you. What is the most inappropriate costume to make slutty? So, okay,
Naughty Lisa.
slutty nurse is somewhat acceptable.
Naughty Lisa.
Right.
You saw my blog post that I'm about to put out. Did you see what I wrote on there?
I did read it, but I don't remember that reference.
Oh, slutty Osama bin Laden.
Oh,
It's a rough one. He has a rough costume.
That's a rough joke. Now
Woof.
so look for that on Friday. This comes out Thursday. Look for that Friday. But yeah. So 3-part question. One is, what was your question again?
What are you being for Halloween? 2, are you going to wear your costume to work? 3,
What's
what's the worst slutty costume you've ever seen?
or you can even think of?
That you could even think of in your brain.
I think slutty Terminator is a terrible costume.
What? That's a great costume.
Okay, so
crazy.
hit us up on Facebook, hit us up on Twitter at PHANTA Media, or you can drop us an email, feedback@notsocorporatepodcast.com, and let us know what you are doing for Halloween, what you're wearing, if you're wearing it into work, and the most inappropriate slutty costume you can think of. We would love to hear from you, and if we have some good ones, we will read them on a future podcast. Listen, again, I'd like to thank Warren for coming in to the podcast. Well, I guess he didn't come in. We Skyped him in. But listen, Warren, thank you for doing that. I super duper appreciate it. And again, to find out more about Warren, visit him, warrencoughlin.com. Listen, guys, thanks so much for coming in. Leah and Roland, appreciate it as always.
Sure.
I was here anyways.
You were here
'Cause I
anyways.
produced the podcast.
For my fans, I might not be on it next time. Who knows?
Okay. With that said, we'll see you next time.
Oh my goodness. Can we do a question of the week? Are you exclusively a Roland fan?
With that,
Comment
with
if you
that,
are.
with that, we'll see you next time.
I like Chinese fortune cookies. That's good coaching.